Houston, we have a problem. We all know where that comes from, right? You heard Tom Hanks say that in the movie Apollo 13. It's based on a true story. Astronauts took off from this planet. They barely broke free from atmosphere, and then all of a sudden there was an explosion. 2 tanks, a hydrogen tank, an oxygen tank, blew, and the next thing you knew, those astronauts were on a perilous journey, and the tanks were draining quickly on them. Some of us in this room know exactly what I'm talking about. You have a tank that is dangerously low right now. It might be a physical tank, it might be an emotional tank, it might be your spiritual tank. I mean, I get it. Even ministers, sometimes my cup is dangerously low, and I got to shut it down. I got to take that time serious. If I stay too long in that kind of situation, that is not healthy for me. And then it's not healthy for my loved ones around me, because I just don't behave the best during those times. We've all been there. Some of you are there right now with a dangerously low tank. We're talking about rest. This is just the second week of a little 2-week series that we've titled Power Down. And all I wanted to do was I wanted to show you so you could re-embrace this whole idea of rest that God gave us. God created the world in 6 days. On the 7th day, he rested, and then rest became a commandment, and then a day of rest moved into the Old Testament's practice of a Sabbath. And then when the new church started, we don't have our Sabbaths on Saturday anymore. It moved to Sunday. And this becomes kind of a Sabbath rest for us. It's a time where we practice our priorities: God, family, others. God, family, others. We have those banners out there to be a constant reminder in that big atrium that we want you to be very concerned about your relationship to God, your relationship to your family, and your relationship to others. Well, God gave us the gift of rest. Rest is a gift we give to others around us. For God, it was so important, he weaved it into your well-being. Science, by the way, as I pointed out last week, science has pointed out now that our whole physical system works best when there is an every 7th day of rest. Isn't that curious? The whole medical field recommends that every 7 days you take a day of rest. Your body needs that. And that's exactly what God established. Well, then it's not surprising that this would be important to Jesus, too. Jesus often made his disciples break away from ministry in order to rest. Now, stop for a minute. You know there were crowds of people trying to get ministered to by Jesus, and he walked away from that at times. Does that bother you? You know there were lines of people waiting to be healed, and Jesus often said, we got to get moving. We need to break away from this. That doesn't set well with a lot of people. But Jesus recognized that need in his disciples, and he recognized that need in him as well, too. Mark chapter 6. The apostles gathered around Jesus, and they were reporting to him all that they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, Jesus said to them, "Come away with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Some of us in this room, man, we needed to hear that equation right there. Come away with Jesus by yourselves. Find a quiet place and let's get some rest together. How about it? Where are your tanks today if you were to take a quick evaluation of your life? Jesus only had 3 years to change the entire world. 3 years to turn the whole world upside down with his teaching. Ready, go, Jesus. And in that time, he still found moments to get away and go fishing. He found moments to get away and take a boat ride. He found moments to just head to the mountains. And then Jesus, so you and I would know that he's under all the same stresses you and I have been under. The weight that Jesus was under was tremendous. The weight of ministry. Look at this. The physical demand he was under. He had little sleep. He was walking miles between towns for long periods of fasting, and physically, Jesus would just drain out at times. He didn't have anything else to get. That's why in the front of a boat, he would just fall asleep, even in the midst of a storm. Water splashing over the edge of the boat onto him didn't even wait. He was just physically, the physical demand was such a weight, it drained him. Then he was under a spiritual warfare. He had the temptation of the devil. He had all those confrontation with demons. He had the challenges of the Pharisees. The spiritual warfare was just unmatched in his time. Add to that the emotional burden he was under. He's weeping over Jerusalem. He's in agonizing prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane. The shortest verse in the Bible has just 2 words: Jesus wept. To show you the emotional stress that he was under. And then beyond all of that, you add to that his relational stress, dealing with doubters whom he loved, dealing with critics whom he loved, dealing with agitators whom he loved, dealing with unbelieving family members whom he loved, dealing with betrayal. And he loved Judas. I mean, I look at all of that and I'm like, wow, how did he even manage to take another step in his day? And I think part of it was he saw the value of rest, recognized that what was important to God would be also important to him. Now, in that equation, I told you, come away with me, that requires that you stop crowding out God. Oh my goodness. Satan is so masterful at bringing so much into our world that God gets crowded out, that time with Jesus can get crowded out. Satan is so good at keeping you so occupied with intrusions and interruptions, and he does that mostly, now catch this for a moment, through technology. I'm not anti-technology. Technology has been a real blessing. I know that some great benefits have come from technology. I also know that in excess, it can become a real danger to us. There's not a parent in the room who doesn't recognize that. You limit access for your children to TVs and computers and game systems and iPads and iPhones and iWatches, but we don't monitor ourselves sometimes, and so that stuff starts crowding out a lot that's going on. I'm not anti-technology. But there needs to be some limits, and we need to power down occasionally. And then there's the whole social media aspect of it. They're saying, study after study, that too much access to social media brings about frustration, anxiety, hurt feelings, disconnection, loneliness, sleeplessness, suicidal thoughts, and bad speech. It all comes from too much social. Listen, you know you got to be very careful with social media. You just got to be aware that too much of it can do a lot of damage out there. And so we offered a challenge. Now, this might not sound deeply spiritual, this idea of powering down from technology, but it really is. In our priorities of God, you showed up here today and we talked about that God created rest. But what would be healthy today for your family and for others? God is a priority, family and others are also. What would be healthy in your life for them? And one small change would be to maybe power down from some of that technology for times. So we created a challenge. We challenged everyone for 14 days, find some time. You know, an hour, 2 hours would be better, but at least an hour where you just power down. My wife and I have been doing it. Trying to sit face to face and have a meal together, that's challenging. But we've been going for walks every night and you know, no technology. Just go for a walk, get to know each other a little better again. That's been healthy. By the way, she set me up the other day. I'm just going to tell you, we were walking and she said, I wonder how much longer it's going to be cold like this. And I said, well, let me check that. And I pulled out my phone, and she went, ah! Like I just suddenly become demon-possessed. She goes, you're not supposed to have that. Oh, gosh, you caught me, Just going to check the weather for you, And everything comes in and crowds out those important times in our life. Well, Ron, if I leave the phone at home, what if there's an emergency? What if there's an emergency? You know what? Even if you're constantly plugged in, let me tell you something. Once in a while, you're going to miss an emergency. It's just going to happen. Not all emergencies get to us. Even as you're, listen, we love you so much. You have been such a blessing to Bonnie and I in our ministry here, and I want to be there for you anytime you need me. But we got to be practical. There's just going to be times I can't do it. Recently, one of our men was rushed to the emergency room, and the family was calling for me, and I wanted to go, don't get me wrong. But in that exact moment, I was in a very large baptismal event here at the church. We were baptizing a young woman. She brought in her family from all over the area. They were all here. There was a food event. And in that moment, I was pretty much anchored here. I wasn't free to get to the emergency room. I sent out a quick 911 to our eldership, and I said, I need someone to go to the hospital. I'll be there in about an hour and a half, but I need someone to go right now. And one of our elders immediately said, I'm on my way. And he went there on my behalf, and then I got there later. And it was truly an emergency situation. I tell you all of that to tell you, if you're that important in this world, someone's going to find you, but you're not going to make every emergency. And so every so often, for your own benefit, for your own well-being, you just need to find some time to power down. For the parents of teenagers, if your teenager is out for the evening, that's not the best time to power down. You want to have access to them if they need you. But when everything is in place, you can find some time to just shut it all down. Why am I going after technology? Because it's the one thing that is the most intrusive, and interruptions come from technology in regards to our rest. You don't rest well when all of this is going on in your life. It may not sound very spiritually deep what I'm about to show you, but I found it deeply meaningful for the health of family and others. All right, this may not impact my relationship to God, but in my relationship to family and in my relationship to others, your use of technology might be sending a message you don't want to send to people that you love most. This is from a business seminar. Simon Sinek is his name. It's just a short clip, but watch and just learn.
I just want to show you something. This is the psychological power of the device. What if I was sitting here talking to you, holding my phone? It's not buzzing, it's not beeping, no one's calling me, I'm just holding it. Do you feel like you are the most important thing to me right now? No, you don't. That's the association. So when we show up for a meeting, or we sit down for dinner with our families, and we put the phone on the table, it sends a psychological message to everyone sitting there that you are not the most important thing to me right now. And putting the phone upside down is not more polite. Put it in airplane mode to take away the temptation that something's coming in, and put it in a bag or on a shelf out of sight. And this is how we should be interacting with people, giving them our full attention, because the idea is not that we hear the words they say, but that they feel heard. And this is one of the tricks. If you wake up in the morning and you check your phone before you say good morning to the person sitting next to you, you probably have a problem. If you have to take your phone from room to room, no matter where you go, you probably have a problem. And just like any recreational drug, the more you practice leaving it away, for example, if you go out for dinner, you don't need 4 telephones. Leave one at home, leave one in the car, you have one with your spouse, it's fine. If you have a client meeting, leave it in the car, leave it in the bag, never take it out. And it becomes easier and easier. And you find it easier not to be sucked in by the fear mongering as well. So like any addiction, it just takes a little work.
You know what? You have an opportunity now to, next time you're sitting at a table with a bunch of your friends and everything, keep your phone away. Just test this. And look people straight in the eye when they're talking and just see who's the first one at the table to break. And when they do and they start looking at their phone instead of looking at you, you'll know exactly what he said is true. There's a psychological message that when I'm constantly looking down at my technology, I am not connecting to the people who mean the most to me. And that device was supposed to keep us connected to the world. And yet, what is the big problem? Our whole world is feeling disconnected from people. This may not sound deeply spiritual, but this would be so healthy for you in the business world, in your family, in your relationships to your friends, if we could just learn to just give eye-to-eye contact. Some of the young men in the room, man, I'm so impressed with some of you guys. When you come up to talk to me, you have a strong handshake. Your dad's taught you well, or someone in your life taught you well to have a strong handshake, and you look me right in the eye and you talk to me. I love that. Every so often I meet someone whose eyes, you haven't quite learned that. You haven't learned the value of eye contact with someone. It's huge. And so technology has its benefits, but it also can do a lot of damage. Beware, by the way, of the anger that social media causes. You hear views that you don't agree with that can cause a lot of anger. Beware of the anxiety that social media can cause. They suggest you do not spend a lot of time on social media before you go to bed, because it can create anxiety when you're sleeping. And beware of the envy that social media can cause. You're looking at people's pictures on their vacations. Oh man, why can't we have a nice vacation? And then you see big families with all those smiling faces. You know they were just at each other's throats, and then someone said, say cheese, and they all went. And you're like, look how happy they look. Why aren't we that happy? No, it doesn't work that way. So to demonstrate, I'm going to tell you, it'll come up here in a moment, but we had a family photo of all places at my mother's funeral here a few weeks ago. My aunts and uncles wanted a picture of me and my family, and so we got them all up there. But the grandkids were just, they were wild. And every time we tried to take a picture, one of them was doing something weird, and we were trying to get control of it. And, you know, Alex, stop touching Ben, and Marissa, smile right, and Audrey, stop with that face, you know. And finally, I just said, listen, everyone, one nice picture on 3. And it was 1, 2, 3. Well, what we couldn't see was the youngest one. She was down below our sight. And, well, here's the family photo that we took. Who was supposed to watch Emma? I have no idea. Social media can cause envy because you think somebody else has this amazing life. And listen, Satan makes it just as hard on their family as he makes it on yours. And so just beware when you're plugged into all of that, that it has its cost. One last challenge today for us in regards to rest. I'm going to ask you to lean into these words from Jesus for just a moment. Matthew 11, Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary, burdened, and I will give you rest." Do you notice the invitation there? It's an invitation to come to him. Spend a little time with him. When you need rest and stuff, I'm not just talking about taking a nap, but maybe in some of your rest moments, you just spend a little time in talking with him. Something amazing happens in those moments. Your spiritual cup gets a little more filled, and there's a little more spring in your step. And what some of us are missing, if we're honest, is we did not talk a lot to Jesus this week. And so we're feeling the weight of this world. We're feeling the stress of this life. And when we're under all of that and it's restless, then we're not giving it to people we love the most. They don't get the gift of rest because they can sense that we're under this weight. I don't know what you needed to hear today. Take a technology fast. Maybe that's what you needed to hear. Monitor, cut down a little bit on social. Maybe that's what you needed to hear. But if you hear anything else today, hear this. We need some alone time with Jesus. There's rest from having that time with him. And so the challenge has been simple. Power down. And that will help you power up.